Welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 163. Today we're going to talk about critical thinking, playing by muscle memory, mental preparation for a match, and mindfulness or focus. As always, my name is Weldon Green, and my handle is MindGamesWeldon, and I am a professional sports psychology trainer and esports psychology trainer and League of Legends coach. And I've coached a number of League of Legends teams, CLG, TSM, Team Liquid, for like a week, I think. Is in there, yeah. G2, Cloud9, I think for a week is in there too, maybe 2 weeks even on that one. And this is my show where I answer your questions, and more specifically the questions that are sent in by you on Twitter using the hashtag AskWeldon and using the app anchor.fm/WeldonGreen, which is a little iOS, Android app you can use. You just download the app, follow my account, raise the app to your ear, and raise the phone to your ear with the app open, and you just talk, and it calls in the question. I mean, you have to click call in, make sure you're on the right screen, and then you just talk. It makes your voice sound beautiful, by the way, so you don't need a fancy, expensive microphone. You just make sure you don't have a lot of noise pollution around you, and it will beautify you, make you sound kind of like a radio voice, which I think is pretty cool. And then I get to play your question on the show when I'm doing my regular show. Right now is a travel show because I was for the week in Mexico with the Latin American North Player Development Conference, but that is another story, which I'm sure that I can make a VOD about that is interesting. For now, let's jump into the questions. The first one is from Justan553, and he asks, or she, how to improve if your critical thinking basically isn't working and the only way you can play the game is by muscle memory. How to improve if you're only training muscle memory. Okay, I have some good news and some bad news. First of all, League of Legends and the other reaction-based esports, such as CSGO, are muscle memory esports. So you only play by muscle memory at the top levels. It's also muscle memory of what you see. So you see something and you have a learned response, like a reaction to the pattern. When you can't see a certain pattern, you have to train yourself to recognize it. That's kind of like muscle memory of the eye, to see that pattern. If you've ever seen pro League of Legends players pop open the items page for like a millisecond before it closes again, and they see everything on it that they need to see, that's kind of like that visual acuity, muscle memory. If you've ever seen a CSGO player pop around a corner and you didn't even see what they were looking at, but they saw everything they needed to, that is a little bit more example of that muscle memory in action, where they can pick up visual patterns because they've trained their mind to do it. So good news is everything is muscle memory, so you're fine there. Bad news is the only way to improve muscle memory is through punishment or critical thinking. Like either you're doing something wrong and the system punishes you and says oh, that's not right, and you find a better way to do it, such as you're playing piano and you mess up and everybody laughs, or you just mess up and it ends the song. So you have to start over. And then you can kind of have this learning moment where your mind goes ding and tries to refine the muscle movement you're doing. It does that in the anterior cingulate cortex, cingulante cortex? I think it's cingulate cortex, the ACC. And there's a little bit of activity there every single time you make kind of like a mistake when you're in the zone and in flow. It fires up, releases a number of neurotransmitters related to rewiring your brain, and then shuts off. And that, of course, gets interfered with if you're under stress and these other situations where you're kind of in this very judgmental way. So being really focused on learning and making the mistake and learning from it is a really key mindset there to assist the actual physical changes related to learning in your brain. Okay, so the bad news is that critical thinking is necessary. So you can't just check out if you want to improve, because there's not a very good feedback loop for most things in League of Legends. You get punished for ultimately for the mistake, you lose or you die in lane maybe a minute after you take a bad trade, but there's not as much instantaneous, you're positioned badly and you could die here, because you're positioned badly 60 times out of 100, but it's only on the 61st time that the jungler is actually there and kills you. So all the other first 60 times you were allowed to make that mistake without any feedback. That is the problem with League of Legends, is that because we train it in not a drill, where if you step out of line you get smacked, if you step out of line in lane, the jungler just auto kills you. Because we don't play it as a drill, we play it as a real, actual live game. You don't get feedback on every single skill that you do, so you have to always critically think. So I think your question is related to my critical thinking isn't working. Okay, so then you need to do the thing that I'm going to talk about in the final question for today, so I will leave that for that question. Okay, question number 2 from Cheaps817, and they ask, What should a player be doing to prepare themselves mentally and physically in the hours leading up to a tournament match? You should be doing the same thing that you're always doing in preparation for a tournament match. So you should try to create a pre-performance pattern that you follow. As far as physical preparation, I think that obviously getting decent sleep is a good start. Making sure that you don't drink caffeine and eat tons and tons of sugar too soon. You want to drink it like 45 minutes before the event so that you can peak your caffeine during the whole competition. You don't want to eat tons and tons of sugar because you don't want the mental deficit that comes from the glucose spike. You want to eat like things like runtime, which has isomaltulose, which keeps your glucose steady, and you want to eat more stuff that's lower on the glycemic index. Like I think even bagels aren't too bad, although I know that they're a bread source. But things like kind of well balanced meals, and especially vegetables, things like that provide carbohydrates, but like in a sustained release kind of way. And probably don't want to eat massive meals. As far as mental preparation, there's a number of things that have been studied in terms of the mental prep before a match, and a lot of the findings are that if you do a pre-performance routine, it works if you believe that it does, and it doesn't if you don't care about it. And the objective of the pre-performance routine is to help you focus and help clear out everything else that is distracting your mind. So one of the things you can do to just do that instead of having a pre-performance routine is simply to do some mindfulness. So before the TSM matches, for example, before the G2 matches, I'll use this, we said that we did our gratefuls. So we did gratefulness on the way to the match, and everybody shared 3 things they were grateful for in the car on the way there. Then we had our scouting reports. Then we talked draft. We got to the arena. Everybody did their warm-ups. Then we had a mindfulness session. And then I got everybody their caffeine. And then we talked more draft usually, and the players all had their individual warm-up, which some of them listened to music, some of them studied their opponent, so they watched tape about their opponent so they could get that fresh in their mind. That's a really good one to throw in there. And so for example, if you know the champions are going to be playing, if you know the champions that your opponent's going to be playing, you can think about that and visualize it. A lot of boxers and sports athletes do visualization. It's not a necessary thing. It's a great thing to do, though, to kind of rehearse all the stuff that you've been practicing throughout the split. Okay, I think that's about it. I hope that that's helpful, Cheeps, and good luck with your next tournament match. Okay, final question from Deactivated 691. How do you know you're in the present? Is it just not being lost in thought, or is it like having a mini meditation in-game? Okay, so first of all, how do you know you're in the present? That's really funny because you're always in the present, obviously. I think I just had an FPS lag there. My signal dropped. Okay, hopefully we're back. You're always in the present. You can't not be. It's your thoughts that are running around outside of time. And the way that you know you're not in the present is that you're basically lost in thought. You're thinking about something that is not relevant to right now. You're thinking about something that is either previous or that has not happened yet. And you're not concentrating on the immediate future and the moment. And one of the key triggers for that is sensation. So if you're focused on the sensory input into your body, such as touch, sight, sound, taste, smell, so you're focused on what you're seeing and what you're touching, then you're in the present. And if you're focused on things that are ideas or concepts, like guilt over a mistake that you made 15 seconds ago, or anticipation and expectation over a play that you're going to make in 20 seconds, then you're not in the present. And it feels like being in flow state. It feels like that game where you were like totally in the zone and checked out and you weren't even thinking and everything was so easy, and like Ezreal's ultimate was in slow motion and you just literally like walked out of it and you saw every skill shot before the person even shot it, and you just were like already walking in the direction to dodge it before it even came. Totally in the zone and flow state. That's what it feels like when you're in the zone. But when you're focused on the present moment, it doesn't necessarily feel as good as that, because it's the same mechanical and mental state as far as performance goes, but it's a very different sensation internally because you're forcing it. You're not just naturally getting it for free. So because you have to sweat and you have to pull your mind to that concentration, you have to like ignore everything else and really, really, really hone in on the present moment, you could be like in agony in terms of your effort level and the sweat pouring out of your brow, and you're like, no, focus. So it could be very unenjoyable actually to do that sometimes, and that's what it feels like to be focused on point in the game. So in reference to the first question about critical thinking, how do you get to the point where you're critical thinking? You got to get really good at being aware of when you're checked out and you're on autopilot. And then you need to be able to both focus on what you're doing and also kind of have a plan that you had before the game of how you want it to play out, and attempting to do that new skill and focusing on the coordination of your body and your fingers and your arm when you're trying to pull off that skill. Really focus on not what's happening in your avatar in the game, but focusing on the actual movement of your fingers and your muscles. For me, that has been the way that I've been able to train myself and other people more quickly in terms of picking up new skills, is the critical thinking you need is actually focusing on the muscle. Remember in the first question the gentleman asked, or the gentlewoman asked, what about muscle memory? Can I improve? I have to improve through that because I can't critical think. So the idea is like, it is muscle memory, so you better be focusing on your muscles and improving those movements. But being like you autopilot when you're trapped in the game with your character, and one easy way to get out of the autopilot and into the like mindfulness of the moment, like I said, is to focus on your muscles, because they actually have physical sensation. You can feel them moving. All right. That's the show. This is for YouTube, by the way. Streamers, don't worry. I'm still going to be talking with you in a second live. I'm just closing out the show for YouTube. That's the show. Appreciate the attention. Thanks for clicking on the link and watching. Make sure to check out my course, mindgames.gg/MAC, the Mindfulness Acceptance Commitment Program. It is the training program that I created to like outsource myself, because I can't train individuals anymore since I'm so busy with teams and other work mostly. So this is like a 50 video course that I created in order to give people the kind of thing that I do with the pro teams, such as I've done this program with CLG and with TSM, and partially in an adapted way with G2. So I think it's a very functional way to tackle kind of all the problems that go along with high performance. Make sure to like this video.